The most persistent financial myth stares back from glossy magazines and social feeds. Many people believe loudly that a six-figure salary is the only ticket to a comfortable retirement, and that idea quietly shapes thousands of life decisions every single year. But that belief ignores the secret engines behind wealth accumulation, and those engines are often invisible to casual observers. If you follow the math instead of the myth, a very different and more achievable story starts to appear. The myth takes root because income is visible and gives instant social status. People celebrate promotions and title changes loudly, but they rarely celebrate frugality or disciplined monthly transfers to investment accounts. Visibility distorts perception, and the loudest financial signals are not the most important ones. Behind your net worth lies habits, not headlines, and that realization changes everything about retirement planning. Savings rate matters more than income because it determines how quickly your assets compound. A 20% savings rate on an average salary over decades produces far more long-term security than a 50% rate started in your 60s. When you prioritize saving consistently, small regular contributions become larger than sporadic windfalls. Compound interest is impartial and rewards time and habit far more than headline salaries. To understand the math, imagine two savers who make different choices, but the same lifetime income. One person spends more as income rises and saves only a sliver, while the other saves aggressively from a modest paycheck, and the outcomes diverge wildly. The first person faces lifestyle creep that eats every raise, while the second discovers that restraint and time can outpace even higher wages. This counterintuitive result is the backbone of how ordinary people achieve extraordinary financial freedom. The FIRE movement made headlines by proving that retirement is a math problem first, and a salary problem second. People from diverse income levels have used extreme savings rates and disciplined investing to retire decades earlier than average, and their stories are instructive. FIRE is not a single blueprint, but a set of principles that tilt the balance towards saving and simplicity. It shows that lifestyle choices and investment strategies can compress decades of work into a surprisingly short window. Lifestyle inflation is the silent killer of retirement plans, and it seduces people as income rises. Every raise becomes an invitation to a new standard of living that often expands faster than savings can keep up, and that pressure snowballs over time. High earners are not immune to this trap and often find themselves cash poor despite impressive salaries. Understanding lifestyle inflation requires honesty about consumption, or else your retirement targets will keep slipping away like sand through fingers. Most retirement calculations reference the 4% rule because it converts a lump sum into sustainable annual income. The 4% rule suggests a portfolio should safely provide roughly 4% annually, without depleting principal over several decades, and it offers a starting point for planning. But the rule is a guideline rather than gospel, and factors like sequence of returns, healthcare costs, and personal risk tolerance can shift the necessary number. When you translate a target into a concrete monthly budget, you start to see how realistic retirement goals become regardless of income level. Practical math changes the conversation. A $2 million nest egg supports roughly $80,000 per year under the 4% rule. That requirement sounds large, but a disciplined savings plan over 30 years can reach that number on far more modest incomes than commonly assumed. Stretching the timeline by a decade or embracing partial retirement options can cut required balances dramatically. Once you see the equations instead of the headlines, new pathways to retirement become visible and less intimidating. Real examples bypass theoretical debate and make the possibility tangible for viewers. There are countless documented cases of people retiring on $40,000 to $60,000 per year by combining high savings rates, relocation, and frugal living. And those lives feel surprisingly full. These stories are not about deprivation, but intentional choices about what matters. And they often reveal greater freedom and creativity post-retirement. Examining these lives helps dissolve the stigma that low or average income equals financial failure. One common path involves geographic arbitrage, moving to lower-cost regions to stretch retirement dollars further. Retiring in a smaller city or in a different country can have living costs while preserving quality of life, and that trade-off amplifies the power of modest portfolios. Geographic arbitrage requires research about healthcare, culture, and legal issues, but it unlocks options for people who value experiences over status. For many, a pragmatic move offers the same comforts at a dramatically lower price point. Timing matters tremendously because a decade of compound interest early in life changes outcomes dramatically. Starting to save in your 20s often affords the luxury of lower overall savings rates compared to starting in your 40s, and time does most of the heavy lifting. The power lies less in earnings and more in the decision to begin, even with small amounts, because those dollars grow exponentially. For average earners, consistency and early action are the currency of future freedom. Healthcare looms as a practical hurdle for retirees and changes the math significantly for many individuals. Planning for medical costs, insurance, and potential long-term care must be baked into realistic retirement numbers, and overlooking this aspect risks hard choices later on. There are strategies to soften the blow like health savings accounts, Medicare planning, and relocation to more affordable healthcare systems. Each solution has trade-offs, so thoughtful planning beats wishful thinking when preparing for later life expenses. Consistent saving beats high income because wealth accumulates through discipline rather than temporary windfalls. A person who contributes every month, dollar in and dollar out, benefits from dollar cost averaging and the removal of emotional decision-making from investing. High incomes that are not disciplined towards savings are often converted immediately into consumption patterns that are hard to reverse. The real advantage belongs to the habitually frugal investor, not the highest earner by default. Sequence of returns risk is a hidden hazard that can derail early retirement plans in the wrong decade. Losing significant value early in retirement forces withdrawals that can permanently reduce the longevity of a portfolio, and that risk is higher when you retire before typical retirement ages. Mitigating the risk means building buffers like cash reserves, flexible spending rules, and part-time work options during down markets. A prudent plan includes exit ramps and contingency funds, rather than relying solely on idealized market returns. Tax-smart investing multiplies the efficiency of every saved dollar and can vastly change required savings targets. Using tax-advantaged accounts, timing withdrawals, and utilizing tax-loss harvesting are all techniques that improve net returns without increasing salary. Small improvements in after-tax returns compound into meaningful differences over decades, and the advantage accumulates quietly. Tax strategy is an underappreciated lever for anyone trying to retire on a modest income. Social Security and government benefits are part of the realistic plan for most people and reduce the private savings burden. Understanding how benefits interact with personal savings can lower required portfolio sizes and provide a predictable income floor in retirement. Optimizing claiming strategies and pairing benefits with private withdrawals requires simple calculations that can be learned quickly. These public programs are not a goldmine, but they are a predictable anchor in many retirement scenarios. Part-time work in retirement can offer more than money. It adds structure, social interaction, and reduces sequence risk dramatically. Many retirees choose flexible consulting, seasonal work, or passion projects that generate modest income without full-time commitments. Embracing this hybrid approach reduces pressure on portfolio withdrawals and often improves emotional well-being. Financial independence does not always mean zero work, and that nuance makes retirement less risky and more pleasurable. Frugality is not about deprivation, but about purposeful trade-offs that align money with values. People who retire on modest incomes often report greater intentionality about spending, choosing experiences and relationships over possessions that depreciate quickly. That psychological shift creates a virtuous circle where lower spending reduces stress and reinforces the desire to protect financial independence. When you redefine luxury as autonomy rather than accumulation, retirement becomes accessible in surprising ways. Case studies bring these principles to life, and there are many public examples to learn from directly. People who worked government jobs, teaching, nursing, or trades have retired early by strictly saving, investing sensibly, and making geographic and lifestyle adjustments. Each story contains ordinary decisions repeated consistently and their cumulative effect becomes extraordinary wealth over time. These lives demonstrate that retirement is less about salary brackets and more about daily choices. One example highlights a school teacher who saved 25% of income and relocated to a low-cost area after retirement. That teacher traded temporary luxuries for long-term freedom and now enjoys a comfortable lifestyle on a modest pension and investments. The key was consistency and a willingness to question assumptions about necessity and status. Their life offers a practical blueprint that many others could adapt to their own circumstances. A nurse who accelerated savings through side freelancing shows how additional income streams can speed retirement timelines without massive base salaries. The nurse combined overtime, side consulting, and disciplined savings to build a portfolio that replaced income within a decade. Variation and adaptability in income sources matter as much as base salary size for retirement planning. The lesson is practical. Create optionality through skills and side income rather than pinning hope solely on one job title. Entrepreneurial beginnings can be low cost and still lead to financial independence without initially high incomes. Small businesses that prioritize cash flow, low overhead, and reinvestment can accumulate meaningful equity over time even if initial earnings are modest. Entrepreneurship should not be confused with get-rich quick schemes but viewed as another pathway to diversify income and savings. Strategic small-scale businesses have enabled many to transition to retirement earlier than traditional corporate tracks. Investment strategy matters because it defines how effectively your saved dollars grow into a retirement portfolio. Passive, low-cost index investing historically outperforms most active approaches for long-term investors, and it minimizes fees that erode returns over decades. Keeping costs low and maintaining a disciplined asset allocation produces steadier, more predictable long-term results than chasing hot stocks or speculative trends. Simplicity wins in the compounding game more often than sophisticated tinkering. Behavioral finance explains why people with identical incomes make radically different retirement outcomes. Emotions like present bias, anchoring to peers, and impulsive spending often undermine the best financial intentions and create long-term shortfalls. Applying behavioral tools, such as automatic savings, commitment devices, and pre-commitment structures helps close the gap between intention and action. Understanding human psychology is as important as understanding spreadsheets when planning for retirement. A realistic retirement plan includes contingency, planning for unexpected shocks, like job loss or health crises, an emergency fund sized to your circumstances, and flexible withdrawal rules provide breathing room in unpredictable environments. Resilience trumps optimization in volatile moments, and building buffers may delay retirement marginally, but dramatically reduces the risk of catastrophic reversal. Prioritizing resilience in your plan creates a durable path to retirement even on modest incomes. Community and social networks amplify retirement outcomes by reducing loneliness and sharing resources in later life. Retirees who embed themselves in supportive communities often find lower living costs and higher emotional well-being, and these benefits are hard to value, but essential. Community living, shared gardens, and cooperative models are available to those willing to explore alternatives to solitary consumption. The social economy becomes part of the retirement asset class in practical living decisions. For those worried about healthcare costs, targeted strategies can reduce exposure and increase predictability. Using health savings accounts, long-term care insurance where appropriate, and relocating to areas with lower medical costs are practical levers. Each option involves trade-offs in cost, access, and comfort, and no single solution fits everyone. Thoughtful planning reduces surprises and makes retirement financially feasible for many average earners. Your mental model of retirement will determine your choices in the present, and reframing goals creates new possibilities. Thinking of retirement as a portfolio of time, relationships, and health, rather than only money opens creative pathways to live well for less. This mindset shift encourages experiments like trial retirements, part-time phased exits, and passion projects that lower spending without sacrificing meaning. Redefining retirement allows ordinary incomes to support extraordinary lives in the long run. Practical steps you can implement today begin with automating savings, and reducing recurring costs immediately. Small actions like renegotiating subscriptions, consolidating debts, and increasing retirement plan contributions have outsized long-term effects when consistently applied. Creating a 5-year plan with concrete milestones transforms vague intentions into measurable progress. Anyone who follows such a plan will find that progress compounds and retirement targets come into focus faster than expected. If you feel trapped by the six-figure myth, the antidote is simple and empowering. Control your savings rate and time horizon. Changing behavior is harder than changing jobs, but the payoff is a durable sense of freedom that money alone cannot buy. Shift attention to what you can control rather than what you cannot, and the math will reward you with surprisingly quick gains. The radical idea is not about earning more, but about living deliberately and investing consistently. There are trade-offs and uncomfortable choices involved, and simplifying the conversation avoids false optimism. Some people will choose to earn more, some will choose to spend less, and others will choose to relocate or work part-time in retirement. And all choices are valid depending on values. The common thread among successful retirees is intentionality rather than income, and that unity provides a blueprint for ordinary people everywhere. Financial independence is less about socioeconomic brackets and more about coherent life design. When you place small, consistent actions in the context of decades, the results are surprising but inevitable. Money obeys the laws of mathematics and human psychology, and those laws reward patience, consistency, and simple strategies more often than flashy income increases. The most empowering conclusion is that ordinary people can design extraordinary retirements without six-figure salaries. This truth changes how you evaluate career decisions, lifestyle upgrades, and the trade-offs that make up a life. If you walk away with one clear idea today, it is this: your savings rate determines your timeline much more than your salary. Start early, be consistent, reduce lifestyle creep, plan for healthcare, and consider geographic arbitrage when appropriate, and retirement becomes attainable. This is not a promise of easy riches, but a practical framework for independence that ordinary incomes can achieve. When you accept that truth, your choices gain clarity, and your future gains momentum. Philosophically, the idea that money equals dignity is a modern illusion that obscures wiser paths to meaning. Financial independence is valuable, not because it increases status, but because it enlarges your room for choices and relationships. And that is the true metric of a life well lived. Retirement planning becomes a question of values as much as math, and those who retire comfortably on modest incomes often report more meaningful lives. If that perspective resonates, then the work of changing habits is also the work of reclaiming time. At the same time, acknowledge systemic inequalities that make saving harder for many people. Not everyone has the same starting point, and policy solutions like improved access to retirement accounts and affordable health care are vital for broadening access to financial security. Individual strategies are powerful, but structural change can multiply those gains and make retirement realistic for many more people. Combining personal action with advocacy creates a stronger and fairer path to retirement for everyone. For viewers who want specific next steps, begin with 3 actions this week that compound fast. First, automate at least 10% of your income into investments or retirement accounts. Second, audit recurring expenses and cancel non-essential subscriptions. And third, research low-cost index funds and employer match opportunities. These micro actions feel small in the moment, but reshape your future when repeated for years. The momentum that follows turns modest earnings into durable independence over time. If you are skeptical, test a 1-year experiment of increased savings and deliberate living. Track what you spend, increase savings increments monthly, and observe how your life changes without the pressure of a permanent decision to be frugal forever. Most people discover that incremental reductions in consumption do not shrink happiness as much as expected. The experiment often reveals that lower spending brings more freedom and surprises in return. Remember that retirement is personal and adaptable, and rigid myths about salary ceilings can limit imagination. Some people choose to retire fully, others choose part-time, and many prefer to transition gradually while preserving social ties and purpose. Design your retirement as a portfolio of choices instead of a single destination. And you will find options within reach, even with average incomes. The freedom to design comes from action, not aspiration alone. As the video closes, the practical truth remains clear. You do not need a six-figure salary to retire comfortably if you plan intentionally. The combination of early action, consistent savings, low-cost investing, healthcare planning, and flexible lifestyle choices creates an achievable path for ordinary people. If this changed the way you think about retirement, then your next move matters more than your income. Take one concrete step today and begin building the retirement you actually want. If this video gave you a new perspective on retirement, consider subscribing for more videos like this one. Share the ideas with someone who believes they need to make more money to be secure, because changing that belief changes lives and timelines. If you take one lesson away, it is simple. Control the controllable and let compound interest handle the rest. Subscribe for more practical, evidence-based stories about money, work, and purpose.